Don't worry, it's not booze. It's just Coke Zero. The only people who say age is just a number, I find, are people who aren't that age. Life changes and your priorities change, and you can pretend it doesn't, but they're changed for your client. And if they feel that you're not vibing with them and you're not appreciating the little horror stories that they have every day, whatever. My kid shit all over his car seat. That's why I'm late. Like, if they feel you're not respecting that or acknowledging that, they just won't buy in as much. Everyone has successes and they love to tell you about them, but everyone also has failures. And I can think of most of my successes, I think, but I sure as fuck can think of all of my failures.
Bryan, I'm afraid because of the COVID situation, we're going to have to ask that you wear a mask during this podcast just for infection control reasons. Is that going to be okay?
Yeah, I got one on actually. It's just it's translucent. Yeah, man.
The new ones.
It's invisible. I've heard of you guys. I guess that's what I'm saying. So I knew that you had an interesting niche. But to answer your question, I haven't really done a bunch of investigating. I just know you guys do a good job. Just kind of picked up on that. So.
Oh, well, thank you.
Don't worry. It's not a test. Yeah. It's not like the first test you have to pass for the rest of the. Can you recite the email that we sent to you in the top? No. So
no.
We sent some. Go on, sorry.
No, you got me through LinkedIn. That's what it was. I've had LinkedIn for 10 fucking years and I've never used it. And finally I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna create a profile here. And so I did, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, I got this thing. I'm like, holy shit, this is this must be a sign. I haven't been. So I haven't been back to LinkedIn since. I don't really know what the fuck it does. I don't know. I do get job offers to sell cell phones in my city through LinkedIn, which is really flattering.
You know that there's always a backup option if the fitness thing.
There's always a backup, yeah.
That's right. And I have considered it sometimes, because these things are so damn expensive. I'm like, if I can get a deal on an iPhone, I might just do this.
Especially the new iPhones. Every year when a new one comes out, and it's $5,000 for the handset and all that sort of stuff. Have you sold them before, or is it just opportunistic people on LinkedIn?
I've never sold a fucking phone in my life.
Might be a great trailer for the podcast, just that sentence.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I put in my skills. I don't know what the fuck I put. I thought online coach or fitness and coach. And now I'm getting opportunities to sell cell phones. So, hey, man, that's sweet.
LinkedIn needs to do a bit more keyword research, don't they? Their algorithm's not quite found its course yet.
I think everyone on LinkedIn who's not best-selling author, entrepreneur, TED speaker, they just assume is failing, and so get them cell phones. That's basically how it works.
Welcome back to the Propane Business Podcast. I have got a tiger on my face because of this time of day, and the blinds are making me look like this. Great start to the podcast. But today we are with the OG, Bryan Krahn. And if you've been in the fitness world for some time, especially if you were back in the golden age reading T Nation articles, then you will know about Bryan Krahn. He is a PT, fitness writer, and the way that he's described himself is a semi-serious physique athlete. So basically, I think similar to us in some way, of someone who trains up to the brink, up to the edge of competing in bodybuilding, but actually not kind of taking it any further because of the massive costs associated with doing that, I think. So what I think Bryan does really well is that he is living proof that fitness is not just a young man's game, which is one of the big common misconceptions within online fitness, especially with the kind of Instagram age. And he's just a fantastic writer to boot. I find that he's really good at condensing complex subjects into very digestible ways to consume. So Bryan, thanks very much for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are for people who haven't been part of this T Nation golden age?
Oh gosh. Who am I? Well, I'm mid-40s. How old am I now? 47. I had to think about that.
You don't look a day over 21.
Oh yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's all the Botox. But no, it's I just started out many years ago in my late teens, just working in gyms as well as going to university. I loved fitness. I loved bodybuilding and I wanted to be a part of it. But of course, back then I was just mopping floors and, checking people's memberships, that kind of thing. But when I graduated from school, I had degrees in English and psychology. I wanted to stay in fitness and I wanted to, get more into personal training, which I did and build that up. And this is pre-internet. So we're talking like 1997, 98. And just, I was living that lifestyle of, got my client files in envelopes and carrying a clipboard and, going from gym to gym to gym and like not building a future by any stretch. And just eventually just kind of tumbled into the online space. Now, like I got into it more on the writing side, and you mentioned T Nation, and I was fortunate enough just to have a job with them just as an assistant editor, like not as a main guy by any stretch. I just I cleaned up articles and, and wrote a few on my own, but that kind of gave me, made me a lot better as a writer for one thing, because you clean up other people's shitty work, you get very good at it. But it also kind of gave me a neat perspective on just the industry at large. And that whole time I was still training people and still training myself. I was very serious. I had designs on being I wanted to be a bodybuilder by the time I was 30 and compete till I was 35. I had all these plans. But as I've learned, as I've gotten older, like life happens and your plans adjust or else you adjust. And I just kind of just taking each chapter as it comes. And now I'm in this position of, I don't know what I would call it, but I'm an online coach now.
So it's everything you do right now in the fitness industry is 100% online.
Yeah. And interesting that you say that. It has been for years now, ever since I was kind of a hybrid. When I was working with T Nation, especially, I was still training people on the side. I still would do kind of odd fitness jobs for money, like freelance editing, just whatever. But still always had clients. But my wife, who's in medical, she wanted to specialize about 8 years ago. So we moved to the US for her to go to school. And I couldn't train people anymore. I no longer, that would be illegal. I get shot or thrown out of the country, something like that. But so that's when all of a sudden I needed to make money. And the only way I could do it was strictly online. So that was kind of like the fork in my ass to really go deeper into online coaching. And I quickly saw that how lucrative it could be and also how terrible it can be. And I don't know, I slowly kind of worked out the bugs and created my own system that is still improving, but, certainly takes advantages of what online affords you to do while trying to minimizing the disadvantages.
So
go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, well, it sounded like the location and the move forced your hand then, and you were like, totally. Right, I'm going to have to go fully online.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad you said that. That was exactly it. Because even when I was doing it kind of in the hybrid model, I would always be like, I just always saw in-person training as that's the gold standard. Like that's the craft. Okay. And everything else is like a lower cost, kind of watered down version of that. And, someone can't afford to train with me 3-4 days a week in the gym. Okay, well, here's this online model. And I had that. It held me back in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I'm glad I felt that way because, like, even today, I'm really busy online, legitimately, but I'm trying to find ways to train people in my house because I just think that is the foundation of what we do, or at least what I do. And even if I get like five client hours a week doing that, it just I don't know, it greases a groove that I think is just so essential to the online coaching process.
Totally agree. We are 99% online, whenever we do in-person meetups or something, there is so much in there that you're trying to explain online stuff. And you're like, can I just like get in a gym with you just for an hour? We'll just sort this out and then you'll be fine for the next year. But I think there's something to be said for that. And you've, I suppose now people are faced with the same hand being forced, but through COVID and through all of this going on with, we've had many gym owners that are now being forced to suddenly step into an online space. Yeah. And I think a lot of the time that they're struggling with not only the technical aspect, but the fact that some of these skills as a PT don't map directly onto working with someone online. Can you talk to us about the kind of experience that you've had from moving hybrid and online, and what the different challenges that you face are when you're working with people?
Well, when you're working with people, like, just, you know, in their face, like 3-4 times a week in the gym model, I mean, yeah, if you're good and if you're really conscientious and the client is conscientious, you also sort of cover diet. Like, maybe they keep a food log. You know, maybe whatever, after the session, you talk about lifestyle or stuff like that. You get to know them. But the focus is always, at least it was for me, the focus was always on what you did in that hour. Like the programming you put together and you putting them through it. And if you're good, you're progressing it, you're changing it, you're tweaking it. That's like the lion's share of your focus. And then after the session, you're like, oh yeah, so what do you got? What are you planning to have for lunch today? Oh yeah, you're going to bring me your food log at the end of the week? That kind of thing. But then you go online and you obviously still put the effort into the programming, but it's just not quite there. Like, there's not the, you know, there's so much more space for you to see the person as a whole. And I think it's provided by the fact that you don't get the same attention to them physically. You're not seeing them. So you kind of make up for it with looking into other aspects of their lives. And it kind of really lit a fire in me, because I figured out, especially with older clients, that like 90% of the stuff that I tweak and optimize and fix relates to lifestyle, you know. And it's just when I could fix that, especially if I can catch it early and work with them, it just makes the program that I put together so much better. Like, I don't have to fix shit down the line. So, I find the older the client is, to a point, like, the more lifestyle is just everything, like, especially stuff like stress and overwhelm and trying to do too much and lack of sleep. And then you throw, like, I got a young kid, like, you throw kids into the mix, changes everything. Just the way people think, you know, the way their priorities are, and stuff that would be like, you know, they'd be stuff that for a younger person, they would be texting you like, oh my God, I ate this. When they got a kid or two, they're like, they just don't give a shit. They just go on with their day because they got bigger fish to fry. But those things still matter, you know? Yeah.
It's a really good point. And you mentioned having kids as well, where you know that you are intimately aware of the problems that your niche are facing. And I think this is so important to understand your niche, and also that, yes, like, you've got what's going on during that confined window of the training session, but if the lifestyle is just applying the brakes to their progress in every other aspect of their life, then it makes sense to look at someone holistically and say, right, what brakes can we take off? How can we make this ship move faster? And I think this is partly why younger trainers just don't work very well with niches that they think, oh, well, I'm going to go for the over 40s market because it's more lucrative. And you're like, well, what does a 25-year-old guy with no commitments and no dependents have to offer to this market? I think it's just a huge mistake. We were talking about this the other week, that people really need to go for a niche that they understand and the problems that they've actually experienced themselves, rather than trying to just preempt it, because they're just going to miss the mark.
Oh, it's just huge. And like, let me be frank, there are 25-year-olds who are way more educated than me, and they're probably fantastic bodybuilders, and they're probably great coaches, and they're probably, you know, could put a client, even an older client, through a workout and be like, all right, we'll fix this, we'll correct that, you know, push your knees out here, like all those tweaks. But and again, this was me. I thought, even as I got older, I thought I understood what it's like to be older. I know that sounds silly, but it's not until you're in the mix and you have all these kind of, dare I say, existential challenges, whether it's kids or aging parents or just different ways you look at life. It just changes the way you see the entire process. You see things, you use the word holistically. That's a great word. Like, you see how everything is connected. You see that you can't always be pushing or even you can't always be pushing everything, you know? And it's just, it was so humbling for me to have my ass handed to me personally when I had a kid. I thought I was going to like be that dad who, oh, my kid's born at 9 a.m. All right, I'll go squat at 3. And then I'll come back and be super dad. Like, fuck, I think I was a mess for about 3 months after just this huge life change. And it wasn't so much that I was weak. I just didn't know what I was getting into, like until I did get into it. And so I do think a younger trainer, I don't want to be that guy who's like, oh, you're too young to do this, because that's bullshit. But it's like, you have to really, the only people who say age is just a number, I find, are people who aren't that age. Because it's true, man. It's just life changes and your priorities change, and you could pretend it doesn't, but they're changed for your client. And if they feel that you're not like vibing with them and you're not appreciating the little horror stories that they have every day, like my kid shit all over his car seat, that's why I'm late. Like, it's like that kind of thing. Just if they feel you're not respecting that or acknowledging that, they just won't buy in as much.
Yeah, I think the marketing lesson there is just to do your market research and understand your niche. And, I never trust when you have like a male trainer who's like, oh, I specialize in postnatal stuff, or I specialize in helping women around their menstrual cycle. It's like, well, you're kind of going uphill with that to try and convince hordes of women that you are the expert in this.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, when you're talking like medicine, like OBGYN or something, of course, I mean, the gender doesn't matter as much, but well, even when I say that, I know women who prefer a female OBGYN for the, it's just like, like, and then when you water it way down to like training and what we do, like, holy shit. Like, I think that's kind of, that's a tough sell to say that, I simply don't go there when, I deal with a lot of guys who are like having hormonal changes and stuff. And certainly it's much, much more dramatic for women and, late 40s and menopause. And I think I understand it, but I certainly don't understand it. I think I get it, but I don't understand it, or maybe I have that reversed. So I would never go there and try to tell them, how to manage their monthly cycle. Like, it's silly. It's just a sign of just immense hubris of, having knowledge, but not really having experience.
This sort of thing, I think, is more, well, firstly, I think offline people have fewer options of who they can work with, because it's just whoever's in the gym, right? Like, that's the market. You have to pick from that. And then people move online and they start to move into these like niches that they think that's where the money is. But it seems like, I think we've certainly experienced this, and I think you're saying the same thing, that online, because you're not the only part of the day that really someone is doing that's critical to their progress, that you can't always see into, is what's actually happening in the session, right? Unless someone's filming their training. So you become more of a consultant about, well, let's talk about what's happening the 23 other hours that like is when all this stuff really fills in. So how is the fact that you're a new dad or a new parent affecting your sleep? And let's talk about that. So you almost become this kind of fitness consultant, nutritional consultant, lifestyle consultant for that person. But that, I think we talk a lot to people about how they are almost two separate skills. But when a lot of coaches who have kind of all this knowledge built up from all the T-Nation reading they've been doing, it's when they get to really apply it with people for the first time. Because you can suddenly, it's like, I'm not just looking at squat technique, I'm fixing a sleep problem, or I'm talking to someone about like habits and behavior and things like that.
Well, yeah, and it's that classic joke of you learn all this stuff and you become this fantastic at coaching technique and you become adept at program design, and when do I deload this person, and when do I push, and then finally you get this dream client of this 40 or 50 something guy who's has lots of money and he's serious, and the first thing you notice is like his lifestyle is a disaster. It's like fuck, dude, you have to stop drinking. You have to stop drinking so much. Let's start with I'm making fun of it, but it's that, like, it's these huge lifestyle impediments that you got to like address first, or all the should I apply 5-second eccentrics this phase? Like, all that shit just doesn't matter. I mean, you can pretend it matters and feel good about yourself, but you're just like some of the stuff I see, and I think that's the other thing when you get a little bit older, like especially guys will be a little bit more apt to share the stuff that they're doing that they don't tell anybody else. Because everyone compensates for stress in some ways. Some people just do it in a lot less healthy ways. And again, I'm not making light, but these are the kind of things that make a huge difference. Huge difference.
That's a really important point. Like, everyone
Yeah.
has their coping strategies and their ways to deal with tension, but we may as well pick one that's going to be more productive than one that's not.
Yeah.
And I've got no shame admitting that, like, one of my crutches is training, but I'd rather it was that than heroin. Like, I feel like if there's a choice between the two, you may as well go for the better one. So
but younger people, a lot of them will say that. They're like, yeah, man, I deal with stress with training. I deal with stress with exercise. All these really positive, always physical things that are really positive, and that's great. But that's not your client. You know what I mean? And most people, that's why they hired you, because they need you. They're not you. And especially people who've gone to really high stress jobs, for everyone that gets it out of their system in a boxing class, there's one who bangs down a few shots or something else.
Yeah, well, we were speaking to John Romaniello last week. Similar kind of thing with, if someone sees things from, like, someone is a personal trainer, they are full-time, their life is fitness, and they assume that their clients are equally motivated and interested and everything else. And so they're writing articles about leucine pulsing, and you're thinking, like, this is stuff that, like, only other personal trainers are interested in. And I think it's important for people to, like, we always recommend people just sit down with a couple of their most representative clients, take them for coffee, and just be like, right, no agenda here. I just want to learn about you. I just want to learn what drives you, what motivates you, what are you afraid of, what are you moving towards in your life, like, what are your main challenges. And getting that insight is so much better than just trying to, like, bust out articles that only other personal trainers care about.
That is just huge. And often I see this a lot in younger trainers too. They'll try to impart all this wisdom or all this knowledge that they have onto their client, and kind of, I guess, to kind of show off or say, oh, look, you've hired me and I know all this stuff. And at the end of the day, man, like, I have plenty of doctors and surgeons and people way smarter, more educated than me. They don't give a shit what I know. They in their field, they know so much more than me, and they're not trying to bamboozle me with their knowledge. They're hiring me to get a result. You know what I mean? And they trust me that I know my shit, so I don't have to remind them of that. They're already paying me, And so, I mean, it's kind of like if you went. Go ahead.
Sorry, you finish.
Oh no, I was just like saying, if you I tore my Achilles, and so I'm sitting here in a stupid boot. And if, when I went to see my surgeon, he probably said 10 words to me. He didn't give me like this big razzle dazzle about, wow, he gave me some cursory stuff about what went on, and then basically threw me out, because he's the pro, man. Like, he doesn't have to, like, give me a song and dance about all the shit that he knows about the Achilles tendon. So
it's actually worse if they do that as well. I think, like, I'd far rather said nothing, fix the problem, back home.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you're sat with a boot on now. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, fuck, for the last 6 weeks. So it's, I mean, this has been terrible. This is adversity, so I got another 4 months of this. And it's funny. Somebody emailed me. They're like, you should really write about dealing with adversity, because you got this thing you tore. And I'm like, fucker, I don't know. I'm still dealing with this adversity. What am I going to say? I'm still figuring it out, So, I mean, that blog will be a long ways off. It's been awful, but, awful in the grand scheme of things. It's minor, but just, I can't train normally. I can't do what I do normally.
Yeah. One of our closest friends is just, you go, Yusuf. Sorry.
This is the problem with Zoom. I think we need a solution to this. It's bad timing as well. Our friend, as I think Johnny was going to say, is just torn his Achilles in probably the same time as you, maybe even the same day. Were you together? Maybe.
Probably.
And it sounds like just the worst timing is, like, just when lockdown is being lifted, just when you're able to go back to the gym and stuff, and then it's like, oh, great. Like, he was like, if this was at the start of lockdown, I would have been absolutely fine, because then I'm just under house arrest anyway. But to happen at this point is just so annoying.
Oh, and I'm sure you know Tony Gentilcore.
Yeah,
he's a really good coach. He tore his Achilles. It's like, so, and another guy, an older trainer, fantastic coach, Sean Phillips. He tweeted at me. He's like, "Oh, I tore mine." So it's like,
oh my God.
Like I know it's kind of anyway, but which is one of the nice things about the internet, because there's some actually legit support that you can get that you didn't know was out there. It's not just hate. But yeah, it is amazing when you just realize like how we take all these things for granted. And granted, like tearing your Achilles, it's not like you had a heart attack or you whatever. It's certainly not cancer. It's very minor in the grand scheme, but it's enough to just throw you out of your rhythm and make you, I don't know, make you miss walking.
Yeah, takes away like the basic things that you used to do daily that now are make them a huge effort. Like we've helped Chris, our friend, like seeing him just go to get something from the kitchen is now like a huge ordeal when previously it took 5 seconds. So yeah, completely.
Yeah.
So has your market changed over the people you've worked with over the years? Has it always kind of followed you in terms of like what the average age was and all that sort of stuff? Because obviously you've been doing this for a while, so I assume you've not always worked with exactly the same type of person.
Well, it's, I've always believed like that you write about what you know. Okay. And so I probably started writing fitnessy stuff, when I was about 24, 25. So for then I would write about what I thought I knew about bodybuilding and training. And it was always geared towards people like me who, young guys want to get bigger, want to get whatever. And then I guess as I've gotten older and my priorities have changed and my outlook has changed, I've written more or wrote more towards that perspective. And I guess, certainly it's gotten a lot more traction, I think, for whatever reason. So has my market changed? I just think I'm settling into where I'm supposed to be finally. Or at least I'm accepting it. Because even when I was in my mid-20s and had dreams of being a really good bodybuilder, I think I kind of knew in the back of my mind that at best that would be a hobby, that I would never be great or even good, and eventually I would kind of like do something more professional. And I kind of think this is more what that was. And,
is there anything different to what you would say to that 25-year-old, 20-year-old Bryan Krahn?
I would definitely learn everything I know about my target demo. So, and again, that's where I feel I gotten a lot better when I really tried to learn everything about my target demographic. And I did that about 5 or 10 years ago. That's like people in their 40s, what makes them different? And that's why I kind of get so annoyed with a lot of the over 40 training. Like they make it sound like there's this magic physiology, or like there's some big life change that happens at 39. It's bullshit. It's absurd. Like they're gradual changes, of course, but no two people are alike, and somebody who's been fit their entire life and turns 40, that's not like, Mr. Jones, who's been sedentary his entire life and turns 40. I mean, it's all the changes pertain much more to like just life changes, lifestyle, career, family, and how they impact things. Like that's where the real rubber hits the road. So I figured that out, and I spent a lot of time learning about that over the last 10 years. And that's kind of like, had I done that about people my age in my 20s, I'd probably would have done a lot better. I don't know. But,
just out of interest,
yeah.
So you have been fit your entire life, but if you were to draw a graph of how easy it is to maintain low body fat and to gain muscle and to progress in the gym and those kind of things, do you feel like it's been like, is it a linear thing, or is it like, is it not related to age at all, or do you feel like it's been kind of like there's been times where it's taken dips?
Well, it's interesting how we're so affected by our own lens of how we see ourselves. Like when I was a kid, like early teens, because I was a pretty chubby kid, like young, like elementary school. And then I got into junior high, and I still always felt like I was kind of chubby. I was kind of, I got to lean out. And that kept with me, certainly into university. I mean, I got a lot more like broed out then, but I was always still saw myself as I gotta watch what I eat because I get fat real easy. I'm fucking carb. What's the word? Carb intolerant. All that shit. All that shit. And I, in hindsight, when I look back at pictures, and even, I was talking to a long ago ex-girlfriend, and she mentioned like, well, you were always so skinny. And I was thinking, well, like, what the fuck? Who are you talking about? And I was like, me? And then I'll look back at pictures and I'm like, yeah, I certainly wasn't fat by any stretch of the imagination. I just looked like a normal person. So it's just interesting. I had like that notion that I had about myself kind of affected, certainly cost me a lot of years of training. Like in hindsight, I should have been bulking in my 20s. If I wanted to be serious about bodybuilding, if I could go back in time, I would have bulked like a sloppy bulk from like 20 to 23, maintained it till like 24, 25, like just been a big fat, disgusting mess, but strong. And then, got all, then cut down to like 27. Fuck, I'd be Mr. Olympia right now.
I wish I'd done the same thing, to be honest. From the age of 16,
same.
Just ate for 10 years.
8.
That would have been brilliant.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, and actually, no, that's bullshit. I know the reason. I was kind of like one of those people that I make fun of now. I just always wanted to be leaner. And I never, even though I read it a million times and had people smarter than me tell me a million times, dude, just get fucking big, hang on to it for a bit, and then, lean out. I never embraced it. And now I try to coach it now. And always with that lens of this is a mistake that I made. But I guess to answer your question, like I've always been fit. Yeah. Like, cause I always had that insecurity of wanting to be a bit leaner. And so I was always doing my cardio and I was always watching what I eat. And, I'd tell people I'm fat and then I'd look at pictures and I just looked like somebody who, needed a month of eating less shit, so, almost disrespectful to people who are actually heavy, so, yeah.
I remember the T Nation forums had like two sides to them. Like you probably like when I mentioned T Nation forums, it like comes up like an emotional reaction in people sometimes. But I remember there was like this, like people were just adamant that no matter who you were, if you were under like 230 pounds, you needed to bulk. And then I think it was Christian Thibodeau put out an article saying like no one should ever be above 10%. And it was like all the truth about bulking, the article, and there was just this like the comments in that article were like, no, this is bullshit. Like you can't get big on 10% body fat and all that sort of stuff. But we definitely had the same thing. Like we spent our entire 20s basically trying to be too lean, and in doing so, you just completely hamper like the best period of your life that will ever be to build muscle. Never comes back.
Yeah, and I love Tib. I've known him, unimpeachable character, that guy. But I'm sure that's one of the things he'd like to take back too. I mean, it's just that we had like, especially that 10% rule, and I remember, Tim's Canadian, I'm Canadian. We got that from Paul Quinn, another Canadian. It's kind of like a little like sewing circle up north of the border. We have all these hard rules that we follow, and then you get to be a little bit older and you realize not only are the rules kind of bullshit, they're just contextual. Like the whole, if you're over 10%, you shouldn't bulk thing. The body fat equations are all bullshit. I did that full time for 5 years. Like, it's just like, it's utterly bullshit. Even if you get a DEXA, it's pretty flawed. And that whole 10% rule, what it really means is once you're adding more fat than muscle, and you can feel it. And if not, your coach should be able to spot it. Then you probably should diet down a bit, or at least stop aggressively trying to add weight. But we used to have people be like, oh, if I can't see this part of my abs, I'm too fat and I have to go on this, I have to go low carbs and I have to do this and do that. And, I call it playing puppet master with your body. Like, oh, I'm going to overeat for 3 weeks and then I'm going to undereat for 2 weeks and I'm going to reset my, I'm going to restore my insulin sensitivity. Like all this shit the people, they're not even fucking testing it. That's where I start laughing nowadays. Like they're doing all this. I'm going to restoring leptin. I think it was another one. Or anyway, it's just absurd. And
we've been fully down that rabbit hole. It's embarrassing. Just how many like I remember we were coming home from the gym, and me and Johnny would both have 100 grams of dextrose with 200 milligrams of caffeine and some like hydrolyzed whey and and all this like horrible stuff in a drink post workout late afternoon, because the caffeine will suppress our insulin sensitivity, but it'll partitioning. And like, hang on, what are we doing here? This is So it sounds like. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I think that you're a little bit younger than me, so I honestly think that you have less to be ashamed of, but like for me, I was old enough that I had a few years. I'm not quite old enough. Like when I was like 16, 17, I remember my mom would drop me off at the local hardcore fucking World Gym, and once or twice a week I got to go there, and that's when we're talking like mid 80s, and then I got to see a lot of what gets people big in the real world, before like all the marketing and supplements and bullshit really messed it up, and it was just dudes like lifting big and eating big, and they were having fun in the gym, but they were working hard. They weren't overthinking things, and
not overthinking is the big one, isn't it?
Yeah,
and what's
not overthinking. Yeah,
what's more hardcore than having your mum drop you off at the hardcore gym as well? I mean, there we go. So you've been through a bit of a metamorphosis. You've worked in like a complete offline PT role. You've been in admin and then editorial roles, and then you've done hybrid and you've done fully online. Throughout this journey with your career, has there been any inflection point or any big realizations where you've seen your revenue take a jump, or you've seen your reach improve, or anything?
Well, definitely, like whenever I worked for somebody else, obviously when I was just I loved my T Nation job while I had it, but it was just, that was just a salary job. I cleaned up articles. I wasn't, I wasn't like, a big contributor or anything. But it's whenever I really just went all in on me, like when I had the confidence to, especially when the over 40 thing kind of took off. And to be honest, like that wasn't a plan. Like I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm the over 40 guy. It just all of a sudden all my clients were this age, and it just kind of like an expression I heard was like, sometimes you just got to listen to your career. And I just kind of realized like, this is kind of my thing. I think, now I got to learn more about it, and get good at it. But that's, I didn't like, look at my birth certificate and say, oh, okay, I got to go after people this age, or it just kind of happened. And I started to make it happen a lot more. So that's like, I always made a lot more money when I just put out good content for that that focused on that demo. But very quickly though, like I don't do well. Like right now I average probably anywhere from 35 to 50 one-on-one clients a month. And for me, like once it gets to 50, I could do more. I could always do more. I could always do more. But it very quickly stops being better. And of course that puts the governor on my income, what I can earn. So I've looked at other things, like I'm starting to do group training again, and always have a bunch of half-done books, but like one-on-one training or online training, that's the lion's share of where I make my money. And it's a bit precarious, because I look at people that I would hire if I wanted to say, I want to get super fucking jacked by the time I'm 50, like really good, like hire a really good technical coach. Like there's a handful that I would hire. All of them, I've noticed their careers, they've gone from zero to very busy to all of a sudden they work with next to nobody. They've all had that arc, and I'm kind of like, what the fuck is going on? Because that's not good for paying the bills. But they all they reach a saturation point, they have to pull back. So I'm kind of like trying to not reach that saturation point. So like for me, I think it's around 45 clients or so. Once it's past that, I don't feel like I'm giving the attention that I should give.
Do you think that was a burnout thing for them? Or is it like a service quality thing? Right.
Probably a bit of both, and I think sometimes they're kind of the same thing. It's just because they got to be really good because they're really fucking good. And all of a sudden, everyone wants to hire them. So they raise their rates, but most people aren't total assholes, I find. And so you only raise your rates so much. And, they've all reached I can't work with any more people. I want to step back, and like most have other things on the side that they do for money. But with coaching, it's just they reach a kind of a tipping point where I can't, or I won't do anymore. And then I guess you could, if you're more business savvy, you have, farm out to other coaches and stuff like that. I've done that in the past. I just do better when I do it myself. Let's put it that way. And the clients obviously appreciate that more too.
So is that you kind of have one mainstay, which is the one-to-one online coaching, and any inquiries you get through social media, your website, they will kind of go to that one product.
Yeah. And, but now I have a lower cost group training thing, which a friend of mine helps me with. And that's more for people. I think it's a great option. I mean, it's way cheaper, and it's just for people. I like, not so much for the programming, but if they want to have a coach on retainer, like they don't want, they just want to have somebody they can ask questions to whenever and get good answers. And I think it's great value, but one-on-one is where I make that's kind of the focus of my business. And I just find that, like these people who say, just over the weekend, a coach was making fun of me. He's like, "Oh, I have so many more clients than this guy. I blew past him." And I'm kind of like, dude, that's nothing to brag about, man. Never want to brag about how many people you got, because I've seen your programming and it's pretty cut and paste. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's I think we, like in the early days of doing online coaching, we only did one-to-one, ran up against the same thing. I think every coach we've spoken to, like I think Eric Helms we were chatting to said his limit was like 40, and he was doing that around doing PhD and stuff. And
he's at 42. Yeah, okay.
But that's like that's like him, so doing it at night and stuff, around his other hours. But I think it's you have this. You think one-to-one coaching, you think I'll be able to, if I compress it down and I just do replies all day, I'll be able to manage 100 clients a month. And then the reality of that sets in, and your inbox starts filling up, and you're like, okay, eventually I'm going to forget about a client. I'm going to forget to send a program, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
But the thing that's kind of cool, or not cool, or disturbing, is that we always can make it work. Like if I had another kid pop up and my wife quit working and I needed to make more money, could I do 70 a month? Could I do 80? I'm sure I could. I'd fucking find a way. Until I couldn't, you know what I mean? Until all of a sudden, because right now I don't have a lot of churn. I'm rarely hungry to get people, because a lot of people don't drop out much, which I love. It's great. But when someone has lots of clients, I'm always kind of thinking, you probably have lots of churn. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is not what I want.
Yeah, it's a good point. We found our kind of sanity threshold is probably 25. I think once we start to go beyond that, but maybe because of the other things that we're kind of trying to juggle. But beyond that, we start to just, you get a new client, you sleep an hour less. You get a new client, you have to sacrifice like a gym session, and it starts to really impact on your life. And that was kind of before we started really focusing on leveraged coaching and info products, which I think in terms of scalability has been much better for our lifestyles for sure. Is there anything that you'd recommend, because I'm conscious of your time, Bryan, that for people who are starting, let's say you've got a PT who wants to dip their toe into online coaching, how would you recommend that they get started with it?
Well, I probably, when I give you my quick story here, it'll probably be like, you've heard it a million times. Like, I started with just putting stuff up on Facebook, especially back when Facebook seemed to be a little bit more engaging or positive, and mentioning, just putting up good, helpful content, just whatever, and eventually adding a tagline, "Oh, I'm doing online coaching," and I think after 6 months of that, I had one client, and I didn't buy a bunch of systems. I just coach them, emails back and forth. Use your Google Doc kind of thing. But then I found it goes up exponentially. Like, you'll have one forever, and then you'll have two, and then you have four, then you have 8, then 16. And then I think when I was at 20, I had the conversation with my wife, like, I should really kind of go in on all this, and kind of cut back on whatever else I'm trying to do. And, and then here you go. Then all of a sudden you get the problem that we were discussing before. Like, when you put a governor on it and look at doing other things, and, the stuff you mentioned, like info products is, I'll be bugging you about that. I've always got a bunch of half-baked ideas that I just don't have the time to finish. And that's what they're ideal for. It's just when you're kind of capped training. But to answer your question, if I was new, I wouldn't try to force growth that much. I would just get really fucking good. If I had 2 people, I'd be really fucking good. And then I'd just, I know that sounds like a stupid thing to say. You always want to make more money, but...
Well, no, it's funny because that is such a common thread that we see with... so we spoke to Mike Israetel a few weeks ago, and he said the same thing. He was like, yes, you've got to market yourself and so on, because otherwise if you're really good and you don't, no one's going to know who you are. But it has to be at the core of your work is just delivering a good result, because people often lose sight of that and they're focusing on all the funnels and stuff. And if they can't get a client lean and they can't, get results for the client, then that needs to be step one. And then exactly as you said, then you start to gain the snowball.
Yeah. Like, it's just like, I don't know, like everyone has successes and they love to tell you about them, but everyone also has failures. And, I can think of most of my successes, I think, but I sure as fuck can think of all of my failures. And I think about them every fucking day, pardon my language. And there are mistakes that I made just as I was just working with more people and more different, figuring shit out. And I'm always kind of keep that in the back of my mind. Like, I want all my failures to be from in the past. I don't want to, I'm sure I'll still have them as I move forward, but I want them to be rare.
Yeah. Minimize failures is a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, this whole trend, I fired the client. And I'm like, well, yes, sometimes we all got people who just can't commit, or they just whatever. But a lot of the time is like, you just weren't a good fit for them. Like, you just didn't deliver the product that they needed. And
if someone's firing clients every day, then it's very much like you're on a first date with a girl who's like talking about all of her ex-boyfriends being absolute psychopath bastards, and you're like, hang on, do you think possibly?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I found that whenever I'm in the mindset where I think everyone around me is an asshole, it's probably I'm the asshole. But yeah, no, people want to grow too fast. And I think this job is hard. That's what I'm getting at. I think being a really good, especially an online coach, being a really good one, covering all the bases and knowing what bases that person needs to have covered more, it's hard. And, getting them to give you the right amount of communication, it's hard. So I don't know why anyone would think that they could just sprint into this. Like, I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
We watched a video, like, back when we were starting doing this stuff, like about when we were about to just start doing it full time, watched a video by Jim Wendler on like the path to launch 531. And the thing that stuck with me from watching that video was how much he emphasized, like, don't just start doing this for making money, because you just make bad decisions. You do things for the sake of making money at the cost of like serving clients and putting out a better product. And like 531's done all right. Like, quite a lot of people have heard 531. So like, it was interesting to hear him talk about like how long he spent testing the progressions and the program and how many iterations and editions there were of 531 before he released one ebook, and then people are like rushing to become famous online coaches, having never worked with anyone before. So, it's a common mistake.
Yeah, and he's a great example of that. Like, that's someone who, I mean, tons of time under the bar there. I mean, that's
strong.
And that product got ripped off so many times. I mean, however much he's made on it, he could have made twice as much if people weren't constantly pirating it. And
I know. I've heard him talk about that so many times, about how many like instances he's had of like trying to take down pirate copies of it. It's like, man, it just must be everywhere. It just must be. But you Google 531, I imagine a lot of the links are just pirated links.
Yeah. Although now that's been at least 10 years for that book, at least. So now he's probably at a point where he probably doesn't really care, because it's like, it's still getting his message out there. I'm sure he cares, but like it's not as much of a kick to the balls now.
Yeah,
it's now more just like a kick to the knee. So
well, unless it's a deliberate, like Tim Ferriss strategy where he deliberately leaked his 4-Hour Chef book, so that it created this kind of mystique of like, oh god, it's been leaked, we're going to download it, and then it was like the first couple of chapters, and they're like, oh hey, if you want to get the full thing,
that's
then
done so well, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Like so many people you speak to in the strength game have done 5-3-1.
Oh yeah. Oh, and it's it just kind of created the framework for the ebook. Really, it's just like a good standalone product. I mean, it's I don't know if there'll ever be another one that'll there'll be something that'll do that well, but it won't be like that. Like that's kind of like the chapter and verse of that product.
The only one that I think could have been, and he's still done decently with it, but Martin Burkhan and the Lean Gains method, because when he launched it, it was just like a free page on a free blog post, and he was like, oh, I'm going to release a book soon. I'm going to release a book, and then a decade later, he didn't release a book, and loads of other people ripped off his idea. And then he released one like 2 years ago or something with Alan Aragon as the foreword, just a week before all of the sexual harassment stuff kicked off. And it was like, oh, Martin, like your timing. If you'd just done all of this like 4 years before, you would have cleaned up the diet industry. So
yeah, that's true. The other one I think of is I still get when people ask me about like really low volume rest pause training, dog crap training. I still send people that link to that one blog post was called Cycles for Pennies. And anyone who's like followed Dante and dog crap, it's like a 15-year-old blog post.
I've read it.
And it's all about how to set up this program. And I just think it's funny like that blog post could have made him so much money if he just like I don't know. I'm sure Dante doesn't care. He's done very well for himself, but it's just there are a handful of things that just are just standalone, kind of touchstone things in our industry that change the game. And there's a lot of shit too, though.
Yeah, like truly sort of innovative frameworks, I guess, weren't they? Like ways of organizing like thoughts around training. Like 5-3-1 was like that. Like it's just barbell progression, very simple progression, but it was a really neatly organized. Dog crap was just high intensity training, but gave it a name, gave it like a way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and there's a system. You know what I mean? It's like people love systems. So and unfortunately, when you start actually coaching, you have to always leave the system, depending on the individual, or at least modify it. But that's the difference between coaching and books. So books are $20 or $50, and that coaching's a lot more. So,
I'd like to know how many PTs have put a client through a like dog crap style Widowmaker in a commercial gym. That is I just think that's the hardest thing you could do in the gym. It's awful.
It's funny you say that because I've been in this stupid boot. I haven't squatted in so long, and I would give anything. I say this now to be able to do like that one set of 20, like to have that feeling again. Like I'm sure I'd regret it as soon as I said it, but
immediately. I think on rep 10, you'd regret it on rep 10. But until then,
when you've got raspberry flavored whey like spilling down your front, and you're like, "Oh, this is grim." Bryan, how can we find out more about you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Well, yeah.
If you need a cell phone. No, man, you can. My website is bryankrahn.com, BRYANKRAHN.com, and I'm on Facebook and sort of on Instagram. I'm figuring that out. But
I'm following you on Twitter as well. I don't know how active you are kind of on Twitter right now. I've seen a lot of stuff coming up recently, but didn't know if it was scheduled.
No, it's funny. My system is I get up in the morning and I drink way too much coffee and I start firing stuff on Twitter, and then I fire that onto Instagram. That's my little like system. Unfortunately, sometimes some of the stuff I fire out there, I probably shouldn't fire out there, but whatever, I don't care. But
I think Twitter's great to like refine your thoughts, though, isn't it? And actually, like as we said at the start, you're very good at distilling complex information into that. Like even your tagline, "Muscle solves problems." Like there's so much in there that there's articles worth of stuff to tease out of that sentence.
Yeah, well, yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I've always found Twitter good for that too. I guess the character limit, it just forces you to be concise and, yeah, it is kind of a good tool in that respect. Like, I don't know if it's built my business one iota. I don't, hopefully it has, I don't know. But I just find it that little edge to it that, okay, I got to keep this punchy, get the most across. I don't want to do like 10 tweets of the same thing. I want to get it all out there. It does kind of, yeah, it does force you to distill in a way that, because nothing's worse than like a long Facebook post. I just quit reading them,
Yeah, exactly. And it's clever as well. I think maybe it's by design, maybe not, but when you have to make something punchy, you have to get rid of nuance and you have to make it polarizing. And as a result, people get outraged and people will comment and interact with you. So it kind of generates its own activity.
Yeah. I mean, I do grow wary of when the outrage is from my colleagues. I much prefer it when it's from like someone who might eventually buy from me or want to learn from me or something. It's always somebody I fucking work with in some way. It's like, dude, I don't have time for you. It's like, but it's like fucking phone me. I mean, you don't have to,
like, I think you should just start replying to all the tweets with phone me.
I mean, yeah, I know. I had that over the weekend. Somebody got all just butthurt over something I said. And I'm like, fuck, dude, I've known you 10 years. Call me. Like, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Anyway, I think sometimes, yeah, we blur the lines between this is a business tool. This is like a marketing tool. This isn't my life. But
I had someone come up to me the other day who's I've known for 15 years. And she was like, Yusuf, are you angry? You seem really angry at the minute. And I'm like, what makes you say that? She was like, your Twitter's really angry. I'm like, no, that's just, we've got 280 characters. Like, it's not, I'm not angry. I just have to keep it concise.
So this is social media, man. It's sort of real life, but not quite real life. Like, let's, anyway, but yeah.
Well, Bryan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for chatting to us. And we'll stick all the links in the description below.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was great. Anytime.